I stood at the back of the church, watching the love of my life walk down the aisle towards my best friend. Yeah, you heard that right. And no, I wasn't there to wish them well. The place was packed. White roses everywhere, golden chairs lined up perfectly, the smell of expensive perfume and champagne in the air. People whispered, exchanged glances, but no one noticed me. I preferred it that way. Emma looked stunning, no doubt about it. A white dress, laced perfectly to fit her curves, her golden hair curled just enough to look effortless. She had that radiant glow brides are supposed to have. But all I could see was a liar in white. And then there was Mike, standing up front, smiling like he just won the lottery. My best friend. Or at least, that's what I thought he was. He stood there, adjusting his cuffs, looking nervous and happy at the same time. If someone had told me a year ago that I'd be watching my girl marry my best friend, I'd have laughed in their face. Hell, I would have called them crazy. But life has a way of throwing you straight into the fire when you least expect it. I could feel my pulse in my ears, the weight of the moment pressing down on my chest. But I wasn't angry. Not anymore. That part had burned out a long time ago, replaced by something colder, sharper. I was here for a reason. And when the time was right, I'd make sure they both knew exactly what that reason was. I adjusted my suit, took a deep breath, and smiled. Let the show begin. I scanned the crowd, recognizing familiar faces. Friends who once called me brother, but now stood there, smiling, oblivious to the storm about to hit. My fingers curled into fists momentarily before I forced myself to relax. Emma took slow, careful steps toward the altar. Her father walked beside her, beaming with pride. If only he knew. If only they all knew. A soft murmur spread through the pews. The priest cleared his throat. The ceremony was beginning. I exhaled sharply. Timing was everything. I wasn't just a spectator today. I was the reckoning they never saw coming. I met Emma on a rainy evening 3 years ago. It was one of those random encounters that feel like destiny at the time. I had ducked into a coffee shop to escape the downpour, shaking the water off my jacket when I saw her. She was sitting alone, stirring her drink absent-mindedly, her nose buried in a book. There was something about her, something magnetic. I don't know what pushed me to approach her that night, but I did. I made some dumb joke about how the rain always makes people look like wet dogs, and she actually laughed. Not a polite chuckle, an actual, genuine laugh. That's when I knew I was in trouble. We clicked immediately. Conversations flowed effortlessly, as if we had known each other forever. She was smart, sarcastic in just the right way, and had a smile that made the world seem a little less awful. One coffee turned into dinner, then another date, and before I knew it, she was my entire world. For 3 years, we were inseparable. We traveled, stayed up late talking about dreams and fears, had lazy Sunday mornings wrapped in each other. Sure, we had fights, every couple does, but I always thought we were solid, that we had something real. Turns out, I was just another idiot in love. I started noticing things about a year ago. Small things. She started staying late at work more often. At first, I didn't think much of it. She had a demanding job. But then came the secrecy. She'd keep her phone face down, step out of the room to take calls, laugh at messages she wouldn't let me see. My gut told me something was off, but I ignored it. I didn't want to be that guy, the jealous, paranoid boyfriend. Then, one night, she came home smelling like cologne that wasn't mine. I asked her about it, casually, pretending not to care. She laughed, said it was from hugging a coworker goodbye. Something about the way she said it, too quick, too smooth, it didn't sit right. I should have pressed her then. Should have looked her in the eye and called her out. But I didn't. I let it slide. Because I loved her. Love makes you blind, or maybe just stupid. I kept brushing it off, convincing myself it was nothing. Until the night I found the messages. The ones that shattered everything. The night I finally decided to check Emma's phone, I already knew. Deep down, I think I had known for weeks. Maybe months. But I had kept lying to myself, convincing myself that I was just being paranoid. That I was overthinking. That she still loved me the way she used to. She had fallen asleep early that night. I sat next to her on the couch, listening to the soft sound of her breathing, watching her phone light up with a notification. I stared at it, heart pounding. My hands felt cold and clammy, but I reached for it anyway. The phone wasn't locked. It was almost like she wanted to get caught. I opened her messages and scrolled. And there it was. Message after message. Words that made my stomach turn. I miss you already. Last night was amazing. Can't wait to see you again. He has no idea. It's almost funny. And then the worst part, the name at the top of the screen. Mike. My best fucking friend. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. I read through every message, each one cutting deeper than the last. They had been meeting for months, sneaking around behind my back, laughing at how clueless I was. I gripped the phone so tight my knuckles went white. My whole body was shaking, my breath shallow. I wanted to wake her up, scream at her, throw the phone across the room. But I didn't. I just sat there, staring at the proof of everything I had feared, the reality that my relationship had been a lie for who knows how long. I don't know how long I sat there, but eventually, I put the phone down. I got up and walked into the bathroom, splashed cold water on my face, tried to steady my breathing. But no amount of water could wash away the disgust twisting inside me. I looked at myself in the mirror, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't recognize the person staring back. I wanted to know why. Why she did it. Why him. Why I wasn't enough. But deep down, I already knew I'd never get an answer that would make this hurt any less. I walked back into the room, sat on the couch, and stared at her sleeping form. Peaceful. As if she hadn't just torn my heart out. As if she didn't even care. That was the moment I realized Emma wasn't the person I thought she was. And neither was Mike. I wasn't just betrayed. I was played. I didn't confront Emma that night. No, that would have been too easy. Too predictable. Instead, I played along. I kissed her goodnight, told her I loved her, and watched as she slept peacefully, unaware that her perfect little secret had just crumbled into dust. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of an emotional outburst. I wanted her to feel safe. I wanted her to think she had won. For the next few days, I acted normal. I went to work, texted her like usual, even brought home her favorite takeout. But inside, I was a storm waiting to break. And when the moment came, I made sure it was unforgettable. I waited until Friday night. I told Emma I had plans with some old friends and that I'd be home late. She smiled, kissed me, and told me to have fun. I watched as she picked up her phone the second I walked out the door. I already knew who she was texting. Instead of meeting friends, I parked a block away and waited. It didn't take long. 20 minutes later, she left the house, dressed up more than usual, a little too much perfume, a little too much excitement in her step. I followed her. She drove straight to Mike's place. Of course she did. I waited another 10 minutes, then walked right up to his door and knocked. My heart was pounding, but my mind was calm. I had rehearsed this moment over and over. When the door opened, the look on her face was worth every second of my patience. She went pale, eyes wide, mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. "Surprise," I said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. Mike appeared behind her, shirtless, his expression shifting from shock to guilt in a matter of seconds. I laughed. I actually laughed. Emma started talking first. "I can explain." "No." I cut her off, my voice eerily calm. "You really can't." She tried again, stepping forward, reaching for my hand. "It didn't mean anything. I swear. I was going to tell you." "Save it." I pulled my phone from my pocket and held up the screen. I already read everything. Every single message. Her face crumbled, and suddenly the tears came. Crocodile tears. The ones that used to work on me. Not anymore. Mike finally found his voice. "Look, man." I turned to him sharply. You? You were my best friend." My voice didn't rise, but the weight of it was enough to make him flinch. "You had every chance to stop this, and you didn't." Emma was sobbing now, begging. "Please, Jake, I love you. I made a mistake. I'll do anything." I shook my head. "No. You made a choice." I turned, walked to the door, and left without another word. The last thing I heard before I shut it behind me was her breaking down completely. I didn't look back. Walking away from Emma and Mike that night felt like shedding a weight I'd been carrying for months. I disappeared from their lives completely. No calls, no messages. I moved out of the apartment, quit the gym we all used to go to, even changed the bar where I grabbed my Friday night drinks. I wanted nothing to do with them. For a while, it worked. I kept my head down, focused on work, and even started dating again. Nothing serious, just enough to remind myself that life moved on. But the past has a funny way of catching up with you. 3 months later, I heard the news. Mike and Emma were engaged. I almost laughed when I saw the post on social media. A picture of them, standing on a beach, her hand outstretched to show off the ring. The caption? "Forever starts now." Yeah, right. I should have scrolled past, ignored it, moved on. But something inside me snapped. They didn't just betray me, they erased me, moved on like I never existed. And that's when I knew. I wasn't done yet. I wasn't going to crash their wedding out of heartbreak or desperation. No, this wasn't about them anymore. This was about me. About taking back my own story, making sure they knew that what they did had consequences. The first step? Getting an invitation. Turns out, that was the easy part. A mutual friend, one who hadn't completely sold their soul to Team Mike and Emma, let me know the wedding date and location. A fancy vineyard outside of town, high-end, classy, exactly the kind of place Emma always dreamed about. And just like that, I had a plan. I wasn't going to make a scene. No shouting, no fights. That would be too easy, too expected. No, I wanted something better. Something that would stick with them long after the wedding was over. So I started preparing. I dug through my old messages, my photos, every little piece of our history together. And what I found was gold. Secrets Emma wouldn't want shared. Things she told me in confidence. Proof that their entire relationship was built on lies. The countdown had begun. This wasn't just revenge. This was justice. And their wedding day? That was going to be a day to remember. Getting an invitation to their wedding was almost laughably easy. I didn't even have to crash it. Emma and Mike, in their infinite arrogance, hadn't just invited our old mutual friends. They had invited one of my closest college buddies, thinking I was long gone from his life. Turns out, loyalty still meant something to some people. When he got the invite, he sent me a screenshot with one message. Want in? Hell yes, I did. But just showing up wasn't enough. No, I needed to make an impact. I wanted them to feel the same gut-punch betrayal that I had felt that night, staring at Emma's phone screen, watching my best friend become the man she secretly wanted. So I started digging. Emma had always been careless with secrets. She thought that once she moved on, her past would disappear, as if her lies had an expiration date. But I still had years' worth of messages, emails, photos, things she probably didn't even remember existed. Then, there was Mike. Turns out, my best friend had a pattern. Emma wasn't his first betrayal. Back in college, he had done the same thing to another friend of ours. And guess what? He was already sniffing around someone else while being engaged to Emma. Some people never change. I compiled everything, screenshots, call logs, old photos, even a few voicemails. I had enough to make them both squirm. But the real masterpiece? A video. A perfectly edited, time-stamped timeline of their affair, from the first flirty messages to the night I walked in on them. The wedding was in 2 weeks. Just enough time to ensure that every piece was in place. I rehearsed it over and over in my head. The way I'd walk in. The way I'd time it just right. I didn't want to ruin the wedding too soon. No, I wanted it to build, to let them believe, for a few blissful hours, that they had escaped their past. But I wasn't done yet. I reached out to a few people, some who had been burned by Mike before, others who had their own grudges against Emma. It wasn't hard to find allies. People love a good scandal, especially when they get to be a part of it. Then, I went a step further. I had copies of everything printed out, neatly packed into white envelopes. One for Emma's parents, one for Mike's boss, another for their priest. Just in case my plan needed a little extra push. The countdown had begun. This wasn't just revenge. This was justice. And their wedding day? That was going to be a day to remember. The wedding venue was as extravagant as I expected. White drapes hung from the ceiling, golden chandeliers casting a soft glow over the perfectly arranged tables. Guests in expensive suits and designer dresses sipped champagne, oblivious to what was about to unfold. A string quartet played softly in the background, adding to the illusion of a perfect, blissful day. I walked in unnoticed, blending in like just another guest. My suit was sharp, my demeanor calm. Nobody expected a thing. I found a seat near the back, close enough to see everything but far enough to remain in the shadows. The anticipation buzzed in my veins, but I stayed composed. Timing was everything. Then, the music changed. All heads turned as Emma appeared at the end of the aisle, glowing in her white dress. She looked breathtaking, but all I saw was the woman who had lied to my face, who had betrayed me without a second thought. Next to the altar, Mike stood tall, radiating confidence. They really thought they had gotten away with it. The ceremony began, each word from the officiant dragging us closer to the moment I had been waiting for. My heart pounded in my chest as he finally spoke the words I needed to hear. If anyone here has any reason why these two should not be married, speak now or forever hold your peace. Silence. A long, stretched-out silence. The kind that makes people shift uncomfortably in their seats. Then I stood up. The murmur of whispers swept through the crowd as all eyes turned to me. Emma's face drained of color. Mike's jaw clenched. The officiant hesitated, unsure of what to do. I could feel the tension thickening, like a storm brewing right inside the venue. "I have a reason," I said, my voice steady. "And I think everyone here deserves to know it." I pulled out my phone, tapped the screen, and the projector behind the altar lit up. Gasps filled the room as message after message flashed before everyone's eyes. Emma's late-night confessions to Mike, their stolen moments behind my back, the blatant mockery of me. I had edited it perfectly, making sure every dirty little secret was on full display. Emma clutched her bouquet like it was the only thing keeping her standing. Mike took a step forward, his face twisted in panic. "This isn't the place." "Oh, I think it is." I cut him off. "You two decided to humiliate me behind my back. It's only fair the world sees the truth." Emma tried to speak, but no words came out. Her parents sat frozen, their expressions a mix of shock and horror. The whispers turned to outright talking, then gasps, then laughter from some of the guests who had clearly suspected something all along. I let it sink in, let the moment stretch before I finally put my phone away. Then, without another word, I turned and walked out, leaving them in the wreckage of their perfect day. I didn't look back as I walked out of the wedding hall, but I could hear it. The gasps, the murmurs, the chaos unfolding behind me. The satisfaction hit me like a wave, cool and steady. I had done exactly what I came to do. As I stepped outside, the crisp evening air hit my face. The sun was beginning to set, casting a golden glow over the expensive vineyard. I pulled out my phone and checked the time. 5 minutes. That's all it had taken to dismantle their perfect little fantasy. From inside, the sound of a woman sobbing filtered out through the open doors. Emma, the once composed, always in control Emma, reduced to a mess of tears and humiliation. I almost smiled. Almost. Then came the shouting. Mike's voice, sharp with fury. "You had to do this? Here? Now? You fucking piece of..." I didn't need to hear the rest. I knew exactly what was happening in there. Emma's parents were probably grilling her, demanding explanations. Mike was trying to salvage his reputation, making excuses. Some guests were awkwardly leaving, while others stayed to enjoy the drama. A few seconds later, heavy footsteps stormed toward me. I turned just as Mike came barreling out the doors, his tie loosened, his face red with rage. "You think this makes you look good?" he spat, standing inches from me. "You think this makes you the bigger man?" I tilted my head, completely calm. "No, Mike. This just makes you look like exactly what you are." His fist clenched, and for a second, I thought he might swing at me. I almost wished he would. But no, not in front of all these people. He had too much to lose now. Instead, he just let out a breath, shaking his head. "You're pathetic." I smirked. "Enjoy your honeymoon." His jaw tightened, but he turned and stormed back inside, back to the mess I had left behind. As I walked to my car, I passed a few guests who had stepped outside to whisper among themselves. Some looked at me with shock, others with something close to admiration. One man, an older gentleman I didn't recognize, gave me a nod. "Bold move, son," he muttered. But damn, was it satisfying. I chuckled, climbing into the driver's seat. As I pulled away from the vineyard, the last thing I saw in my rearview mirror was the shattered illusion of their perfect day. And for the first time in a long while, I felt free. A week had passed since the wedding, and life had settled into an unexpected calm. I thought I would feel something, regret, maybe, or lingering anger, but all I felt was relief. Like I had finally exhaled after holding my breath for too long. Emma had tried to reach out, of course. First, through texts, then calls, then voicemails that started with forced indifference and slowly unraveled into desperation. I didn't listen to most of them, just deleted them as soon as they came in. There was nothing left to say. Mike hadn't bothered to contact me. I guessed he was too busy trying to rebuild whatever dignity he had left. Not that it mattered. The past was done, and I wasn't about to waste another second thinking about them. Instead, I focused on me. For the first time in years, I wasn't tied down by someone else's lies or weighed down by paranoia. I went back to the gym, picked up old hobbies I had neglected, reconnected with friends who had slowly drifted away while I was too busy making excuses for Emma's behavior. It was like waking up from a long, restless sleep, and realizing the world had been moving on without me. One evening, while sitting at my favorite cafe, I got a message from an old friend who had been at the wedding. Just one line, "Damn, man. That was legendary." I smirked and put my phone away. Legendary. Maybe. But it wasn't about revenge anymore. It wasn't even about them. It was about me finally letting go. A few nights later, I went out for drinks with an old buddy I hadn't seen in ages. We laughed, caught up, talked about work, sports, life. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't looking over my shoulder, waiting for the next betrayal. I was present. I was free. I ran into someone new that night, too. A woman with an easy laugh and sharp wit. We talked for hours, and for once, I didn't feel like I had to prove anything. I didn't feel like I needed to be on guard. I didn't even get her number, and that was fine. It wasn't about replacing Emma. It was about realizing that life had so much more to offer than just one broken relationship. The next morning, I woke up feeling lighter. I took a long run through the park, breathing in the cool air, letting it all settle. The past was exactly that, the past. It no longer had power over me. I took a deep breath, the cool evening air filling my lungs, and smiled. For the first time in a long time, I was truly free. Life had a way of moving on whether you were ready or not. And for the first time in years, I wasn't just letting it happen. I was taking control. I wasn't bitter anymore. The anger, the hurt, the betrayal, they had all faded into something distant, something that no longer defined me. Emma and Mike were nothing more than lessons learned, ghosts of a past life I had no interest in revisiting. Instead, I threw myself into new experiences. I traveled, took spontaneous road trips, met people I never would have before. I started saying yes to things I used to avoid. Rock climbing? Why not? Salsa dancing? Hell, I gave it a shot. I even took a cooking class, something Emma always said I was terrible at. Turns out, I wasn't half bad. It was strange at first, rediscovering who I was outside of being Emma's boyfriend or Mike's best friend. But the more I pushed forward, the more I realized how much of myself I had lost trying to hold on to people who weren't worth it. One night, I found myself at a small, lively bar with a group of new friends. The kind of place where the music is just loud enough to make conversation exciting, but not impossible. A woman caught my eye, confident, easy smile, a laugh that was contagious. We started talking, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't comparing. I wasn't measuring her against a ghost. It wasn't love at first sight or some grand revelation. It was just simple, fun, no pressure, no baggage, just two people enjoying the moment. And that was enough. As the weeks went by, I kept building on that momentum. I landed a promotion at work, started working out more consistently, even picked up writing again, something I hadn't done in years. It felt like every piece of my old self was coming back, but stronger, more refined. One afternoon, I got a message from an old friend who had been at the wedding. Just one line, "Damn, man. That was legendary." I smirked and put my phone away. Legendary. Maybe. But it wasn't about revenge anymore. It wasn't even about them. It was about me finally letting go. One evening, as I walked home from another spontaneous night out, I stopped at a street corner. The city buzzed around me. People laughing, car horns in the distance, the scent of street food lingering in the air. I took a deep breath, let it all sink in, and smiled. The best revenge wasn't ruining Emma and Mike's wedding. It wasn't exposing them or making sure they felt the sting of betrayal. The best revenge was this: living, moving on, thriving. I laughed, not out of spite, not because I had something to prove, but because I was genuinely happy. For the first time in years, I was exactly where I was meant to be.